All right, we are all set to go and ready to bring them back to the time saver. Okay, this is our time saver. This does pretty much the same thing that the planer does, except for instead of the knives, like the planer, this has a giant sanding belt. You guys should never open this door while it's running. If there's something wrong, you can come and get me to turn it on. Over here, it's just these two green buttons. If for some reason it's not turning on, double check that this emergency safety is pulled out. That would be one of the emergency shutoffs on here. You can also shut it off with these. This bar in the front is also an emergency stop if something is going wrong. What could go wrong? Okay, so maybe you measured your board thickness and all of a sudden you're looking up here and you see this needle while it's running. You can see this needle should not go past 25, which is pretty much right in the middle. If it does, you're taking off way too much. So if you see this needle jump way past 25, especially if it jumps up to the red here, you're going to want to emergency stop this thing, or else it's going to cause damage to it. And I'm going to talk about how to set it in a second. This down here is our air supply. This always needs to stay on. If I come over here and this is off, then we are going to have some issues. We had issues with it a couple years ago. Joe spent a lot of time getting it all fixed up, and if this air doesn't stay on, it's really going to screw the machine up. So how we move our so before it was the head that was moving up and down. Now it's going to be the table that's moving up and down. Okay, so you can see here there's two sets of numbers on here. We want to look on the right side, and you can see where the 0 is right here. That's where I want it to line up with the thickness of my board, and I'll go over that more in detail in a second. But this is the wheel that turns the makes the table go up and down. And you can see this says max 1 full turn at a time. And there's even a handy dandy arrow here for you so you remember which way is up and which way is down. Okay, so I said I was going to show you how we're going to set that table so we know exactly the thickness of our board. So you're going to need a tape measure. And there are some pieces on my board where one is sitting up higher than the one next to it. So what I'm going to want to do is with the one that's sitting up higher, I'm going to go to the top of that board to the bottom of the board next to it. And I'm going to want to do that in a couple different spots on both of my boards to make sure that I get the maximum thickness. You want to set the machine to the maximum thickness of your board. Okay, you don't want to find the thinnest part of your board because then you're going to be taking off way too much with the machine. You want to find the thickest part of your board. I see a part right here. This board is sticking up pretty high above the board next to it. Okay, and I'm actually at, this is probably the thickest part of my board. So I'm at 1 1/16. That's what I'm going to go and set the machine to, is 1 1/16. Most of my board is not that thick, but I don't want to set it any thinner than that so that I don't make that needle jump up like we talked about. Okay, so just like our planer, we want to make sure that the dust collector is on and the dust chute is open. And I did get this set. You can see it is at 1 1/16 right now. See how the 0 mark is lining up right there at the 1 1/16 mark. So when I move my handle, okay, that's how sorry, it's so shaky. That's how I get that set. So I'm back to 1 1/16. So now what I'm gonna do is get both of my boards, run through at that setting, just like I did on the planer. And then I'm going to keep bringing my table up. Remember that max 1 turn each time I run both boards through. And then I will flip my boards each time too to make sure I'm getting it evenly sanded on both sides. You do not need ear protection like you need on the planer. You do need eye protection. So you're going to turn on both of these green buttons here. This one is for the sanding belt to rotate inside of there. This one is for the conveyor belt to bring your piece through from the in feet to the out feet. Watching the needle as it's going through and making sure that's not going up past 25. If it does, I'm going to hit the emergency stop button. Also notice that I set both through at the same setting on one side. Now that both sides are done, I'm gonna raise the table up 1 turn and send them both through on the opposite side. So you can see it's going through, and the needle I'm talking about is right here, kind of teetering. And I'm gonna hit the emergency stop because it went up past my 30 mark. So what I'm talking about when I say emergency stop is I just pushed this in with my hands and it stopped the machine completely. So you can see I'm getting really close to this being nice and smooth and done. There are still some spots here that are still not quite taken care of. What I'm gonna do is take a pencil and run it all over the board, and that way when I send it through the sander, I know when it's completely done because all my pencil marks are going to be done. I'm going to do that on both sides of each board. So you can see my pencil marks, and I did that on both sides of the board. So when they get close to done, I will know because my pencil marks will be gone. So you can see most of my pencil marks are gone on this side of the board. So that means that side is good to go. But over here, there's still a few more pencil marks. So when I get that close to the end, instead of going 1 full turn, I would maybe only want to go a half turn on this side until it's all the way gone. So just got done running them both through the Timesaver. You can see all the pencil marks are gone, and it looks like that all throughout my board, and that's what you want. So once that is done, you are done with the Timesaver and you're ready to move on to the next step. One little note, as you start getting towards the end of sanding, the roller inside there is pushing down more and more on your board. Well, it's not pushing down more, but it's coming into contact more with the boards that were sitting lower. So I actually had to, I was going a full turn, and then I was going a quarter of a turn, I actually had to, or I'm sorry, I was going a full turn and then I was going a half turn. I had to put it down to a quarter of a turn because my board is so wide and it was putting too much pressure on the machine. So the best thing to do is just watch that needle. If it goes up past that 25 mark, it goes up to 30 and it stays there, then you know that you need to start making your turns a little less. So again, I went from a full turn to a half turn, and then realized it was putting more and more pressure on the machine as the needle was going up. So then I went down to a quarter turn. That is really important to pay attention to on this machine because it is old, and these are very expensive machines. We don't want to wreck them. So that is one of the biggest things on this machine to watch out for, is that needle. So you guys are then ready to move on to the next step after you're done with this.